Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to this late night, or afternoon for our American viewers over there, to the Talk Football. Just wanted to do a stream, really, because as a football channel, we have fans from all around the country and the world. So this is the best time for me, who lives in the UK, to catch my mate Jesse, who's a United fan. And I've been wanting to have this kind of chat interview for a little while. And from the title, as you can see, it's a beginning of a new era at Manchester United. And the best person for me to ask is Jesse. He's followed the club from an age when I was a child. So really, I just want to get his opinion. So, Jesse, am I right in thinking that there's a new era at United?
So there are certain signs, and this is obviously something that we've wanted to talk about for a while. And the way I look at it is with cautious pessimism. And so I don't want to, you can get ahead of yourself. Football fans are fickle and they like to get ahead of themselves from time to time. So I've been doing this for the past couple of weeks, looking at the facts, looking at what's happening and trying to determine, is this another false dawn? Right. And, I think that the first thing we need to look at is obviously what's changing at the club, because there's a lot of things that are changing at United at this moment in time.
Yeah.
The first thing you need to look at is what's not changing.
Okay.
So this is from just today or the other day. Again, what's not changing is the commercial side of the club.
Okay.
Right. So again, Arnold has come out. Glazer taking, 10 million more, British pounds out in dividends.
Yeah.
Debt rising by another 31 million. I think we're up to 590 million in debt. Not great, but we know how United is run. Right. So that's clear that that's not what is changing. But the fact is, United, despite being in debt, and United fans will hate me saying this, it's still a very healthy business and still a very healthy institution financially, commercially.
Yeah.
So that's not great, but I think it's important to go ahead and recognize what's not changing before we kind of go into what is changing. And the commercial and financial side is not going to change.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, just on that there, the things that aren't changing, which is commercial side of Manchester United. How do you think this impacts Manchester United over the last sort of 15 to 10 years, that you would say that this has been a practice that the ownership in the Glazers has ran from pretty much day dot once they took over the club based on debt? So how has this affected the club as to where it's gone? Do you feel that the reason that it's where it is because of this?
The problem with being such a commercial entity and really focusing down and being a commercial entity first, a financial institution first, before the actual sporting side of things, is that they end up sacrificing so much of the footballing side of things. They'd rather get clicks on Twitter, on Instagram. They're looking for followers and clicks.
Okay.
What's best for the club. So we'll get into this a little bit later, but it's a major reason why Ed Woodward would just leak things out to the press constantly, because he loves the interaction, because then he can go to the shareholders at the end of the whatever fiscal quarter or fiscal year and go, hey, look, the team's not doing so well, but guess what? We have more Twitter retweets than Real Madrid, despite the fact they have 3 times more followers. You know what I mean? So they use it as a sort of a torch to kind of hold up and say, hey, look, we're doing a good job. And the shareholders, they're wealthy people who don't really pay that much attention. And so that sounds great to them, because they know interaction means eyes on the club and brand recognition and money. You know what I mean? So, but it's not, the problem is you're leaking these things to the media and to the press. And you're painting a picture that you're a little bit of a joke on the footballing side of things.
Yeah.
And so ultimately it hurts the reputation of the club within house. And then you start getting players who come to the club because they want the brand recognition as well. What I mean? Because you can go from 1 million or 100,000 followers. I don't know how many, Twitter, Instagram followers Diego Dalot had before he came to United.
Yeah.
But I guarantee he didn't have as many as he does now. I guarantee it went up by, you know, 100-fold. So
that's it. I mean, talking about the commercialisation of United, I don't think I may be wrong that there is a club who runs in that way. It's that they have had a number of signings, which, from a football perspective, and I'm a Liverpool fan, and again, as a United, I should have some form of agenda. But genuinely, I don't. I've grown up knowing two types of United. I've only known two. I'm 31 years of age now, so for me, I grew up seeing United being not only a dominant power off the pitch, being a massive brand anyway through the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, but also being a footballing superpower, one who would win titles, win FA Cups, win the Champions League, win in Europe, and just in all, be an incredible team who made very good signings, bought good players, very rarely miss when it comes to signing players. But that was the past. And in the last 8 to 10 years, watching from the outside in, I fail to actually think of a signing that's worked out well for United, or ones that don't make sense. Paul Pogba bemused me as a signing, that a piece of business in which he was a youth product of Manchester United. He was allowed to leave for free, went to Juventus, did very well, became a very good footballer, and then was purchased for just shy of £90 million, I believe it was. 90 million. And has allowed for the last 6 years to collect somewhere around £1 million a month to now leave the club again on a free. But a player like Paul Pogba carries a certain amount of weight when it comes to being a commercial entity. And I almost felt like that was more important to United, to sign people who were going to bring more eyes to the club because of who they were, the typical player power. And the Ronaldo signing was one which, again, it didn't make sense to me at the start of last season. A 36-year-old, now 37-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo is not going to be able to fit into the Premier League system. And he has bucked the trend. He's done a lot better than I expected he was going to do. And I'll agree with that. But again, it felt to me that what was important was he has more Instagram followers than the population of America. And that was what was important, that every time he did a Manchester United post, it was going to be it was almost free money. It was free cash every time. So your signings haven't been great. And I think that's where you say the commercial side of things, where it's gone. So going forward from there, where do you feel that the club has changed off the pitch?
There's plenty of evidence to say that they are being proactive in trying to achieve something. And I want to make sure that we draw the line and create a bridge here from the fact that I said what hasn't changed is the commercial side. I never expected that to change. Like I said, it is financially, the club is financially healthy despite the debt, despite the Glazers taking out dividends. The money's there. The money's generated. We're not losing much on that. If anything, we don't really see it. That's not Manchester United's fans, supporters, journalists problem with it. The problem is, then if you're going to do that, you at least have to perform on the pitch.
Yeah.
So the restructuring going on behind the scenes now does indicate, at least to a certain extent, that they are allowing footballing people to make footballing decisions. Pogba deal, I would say that was probably a footballing decision, but it was as much a commercial signing as it was a footballing signing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously, that's a commercial signing all day long. But everyone wanted it too. But it's definitely not a football signing. And you could tell because everything capitulated the moment he came in. So I'll just bring up my point here, or a couple points here.
Yeah.
I think there's five main people who have left. But Ed Woodward, gone. That's our vice chairman. That's first. Matt Judge, gone. Chief negotiator. Those are the two biggest figures at our club for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Jim Lawler, chief scout for the last 16 years, gone. Terrible transfers, not football people. Marcel Bout, head of global scouting, gone. Those are some pretty significant changes when you're looking at who is going to be most effective and who's going to get the most bang out of your buck when it comes to the actual footballing side of things.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that United has a really bad system for scouting. So it has to go through who would have been the vice chairman. So Ed Woodward, the chief negotiator, who would have been Matt Judge. Then it has to go through the scouting department and the coaching department in order to sign one player. And everyone has a veto. And then obviously Joel Glazer and Avram Glazer have the ultimate veto because it's their club. So you've got 4 vetoes when only one of those departments ever even understood anything about football, which was our coaching staff. So you just have this mess trying to buy one player, and then people laugh at United for why did it take 3 months to sign this basic player that you should have gone over the line really quickly. Well, that's because it's so political and everyone's trying to get the upper hand on each other. Like if you've ever worked in a competitive environment or an environment like a football club or a sales environment, it's almost impossible to get anything over the line unless you just leave it to the actual associates, the actual executives to do it on their own, because it does get political. It's, well, I didn't like that signing. And then if the signing succeeds, then that person gets all the credit. The person who tried to make the signing. So it just gets really political. And so those are kind of the basic things that have changed within the personnel. And now I think you see Murtough and Ten Hag, because I think that you were right. I think I was trying to hold out on it. I don't think Rangnick he's gone. He's burned too many bridges. That's it. And if you want to kick in there, because I can go.
Yeah, no, I mean, just for our viewers, I've been me and Jesse, we talk on Discord, have done for months and months, and initially when Rangnick came in, I was open to the idea that he would go upstairs. As it was first sold to Manchester United fans, he would be full-time involved in the rebuild at the club, and I continued on this idea as well when actually they also mentioned about bringing in Paul Mitchell, who is currently at Monaco, for those who don't know. He was also very much involved in the RB footballing model over at Salzburg and RB Leipzig. I actually put a theory across to Jesse one night when this was all going, and suggested that bringing Rangnick, who has been very good at building the RB brand, with Paul Mitchell, who's been very involved with the RB brand as well, is to suggest, morning Anthony, how you doing, buddy? Okay. The RB brand, and suggesting, could this possibly, it's a theory, I'm not saying it was happening, that Manchester United were trying to bring an RB model into the club, one that was sustainable, made money for the club, bought good players. However, what it wouldn't do would be bring trophies. The RB model does not bring sustained success. It brings good players, good coaches, brings them to a level, and then sells them on. And for Manchester United as a commercial entity, for me, I felt this was something that could have happened. However, when the news started to break that Ralph Rangnick wasn't going to work in the club so much, he was going to work 6 days a month, 6 hours a month, whatever it was that was suggested, he was going to be on the end of a phone. He got further and further away from the club each sort of month that passed along, and suggested that he was just going to be a consultant. He was kind of going to be in the background. And I said to Jesse, there's no chance. The man will not work 6 days a month, on a part-time basis. He's a football enthusiast. The man will want a proper job. And as soon as the first club that comes to him wants a new director of football, he is gone. See ya. I'm out of it. And then the final nail in the coffin was the Austria job. As soon as he was interested in taking a full-time job at Austria. I felt like I'd been vindicated in the idea that he was going, he was leaving, he'd had enough. And that feels very evident in the communication that he gives in his press conferences. Manchester United will not like what he said. They will not like how honest he's been. The last thing any company that isn't running well wants is somebody of some form of authority saying, oh, by the way, it's dreadful here. Or by the way, these people don't know what to do or how to do the job. And the rest of the world may know this. The house may be on fire behind you, and the last thing you say is, the house is actually on fire. That was the problem. And for Ralph, he's not going to be involved in this project anymore. So for me, Ralph has worked in a good way for the club. Not the way that the club actually intended him, but for the fans, for me, he's been a brilliant, he almost opened the door for some fans. A lot of fans know there's a lot of problems going on, but he opened that door and said, look, this isn't going on in the background. And he sort of paved the way for Ten Hag, who's now got a much clearer slate. I think he's done Erik Ten Hag a big favour, mate. I really, really do.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of what I wanted to say and go into this is the fact is, it looks like, I mean, I just told you about the actual structure of scouting and the political element of it and how difficult it is just to get one measly transfer over the line that shouldn't even be contentious. The fact is, and what it looks like right now, is there's a list there. There's still a scouting department. It still kind of is structured in the same way. But Murtough has a lot more power because he's got Ed Woodward out of his way. Arnold's not interested in that. Judge isn't involved. The head scouts, who have massive egos, by the time they left, they were real issues there. And they're gone. They're gone. So it seems like, all the power really over to obviously the scouting department, but then also Ten Hag and Murtough. And that's where we kind of start getting into the actual evidence side that we can see. We just talked about positions.
Yeah.
But I think I know that it's disappointing for Liverpool fans to kind of have the cards kept close to the chest and to slow down the rumor mill. It gets a little annoying just because you don't have as much to think about necessarily over summer. You kind of have to speculate, read between the lines.
You can't get as excited. It's weird. It's like you want to see, something's happening, because we've learned this in the past as Liverpool fans. We used to question and go, is anything happening? Are we going to sign anyone? Oh, the Glazer, FSG aren't going to sign anyone. They're stingy. But as time's gone on, and they've proved time and time again that things are happening, you just learn to trust them. You learn to go, things are happening. Just wait and see. But as a fan, you want to hear these rumors and stories and get excited about players. You know what it's like. We all love that little rumor. Oh, you heard about this player, you heard about that player. And for me, when I hear was linked to a player, I kind of don't listen to it so much because I kind of think that's not how FSG do business. They only do business in the background. Diogo Jota came completely out of the blue. Like, no one saw that guy coming. Fabinho was just done and dusted. Day after the Champions League final. There you go. Fabinho joins the club. There's no excitement, but all of a sudden you get a brand new player. And as a Liverpool fan, Manchester United, just in these early days, just are emulating that for me.
It's been a lot more quiet than it's been in the past. Like I just said about Ed Woodward, the way we typically would operate was leak as much information out to the press as possible about transfers, never shutting down transfer rumors because, like I said, Ed Woodward wanted to have clicks and followers to make sure that the shareholders, that he had something to show the shareholders at the end of the year. And it's like getting a trophy for fourth place, right? You get to say, hey, look how many clicks we had when we did absolutely nothing all season. And that's where I'd like to get into some of these transfers, actually, unless you want to go. Actually, I have one more point on this.
Yeah.
And there's only been a couple weird little leaks about like budgets, but they've been like 120 million or 80 million. I think we're going to spend a lot more than that. Now it may not be net, but I think that there's something here. And I think that, again, in the past, Ed Woodward has been like, we can compete with anyone in the market, whether we were in 6th or 2nd or 4th or 3rd. He'd say, we have 200 million to spend at the beginning of the summer, just kind of flexing on people. And it's like, yeah, you do, but why would you tell all the most wealthy clubs in the world that you're trying to buy?
It's the same as telling the car salesman, oh, by the way, I can afford all the extras. Okay, let's do it now. That's just clearly someone who is not a salesman, but he's a banker. And that's probably the correct word for him. He's good that he's out of the club. He's made the Glazers a lot of money. He certainly has, because that's what he's good at. However, the football has suffered. And then going from there, I suppose, really, we can talk about transfers. But what I want to say more onto that is, what players do you feel that kind of need to, what players really should be looking at leaving? And I don't mean personal preference, but players who maybe are not going to fit this new Manchester United, if you understand what I mean. Like players who maybe don't fit the mould and are too commercial. Is there anyone that you're thinking that needs to leave the club just as a fresh start, so that they're not kind of... I'm just trying to phase it correctly. Pogba's going. We know this. He was one of the players I'd have said that would have needed to leave. Is there anybody else there who you feel's almost... they're almost too big for the club?
Not too big for the club. I'll be honest. I'm not going to say anyone's too big for the club. I think people who think they're too big for the club.
That's, yeah.
Tony Martial has to go. I'm not going to make that shot. I think Bruno needs to leave next season. I don't think he's going to survive under Ten Hag. I just don't. Yeah, I don't see it. I'll be honest. As far as those go, the thing is that we're losing them all this summer on a free anyways. So I think the ones that are sellable assets, not including the 5 that we all know, which is, who is it? Jesse, Pogba, Matic, Mata, and it's escaping me, but there's a 5th one that's definitely needs to go.
Nemanja Matic.
I said Matic. It doesn't matter. So the ones that are sellable, now this is the thing. So Bailly, Jones, AWB, Tuanzebe is going to go, because Tuanzebe is basically, we love Tuanzebe, but he's not, you have to make it at Liverpool, at City, at United, at Chelsea. You have to make it, even Arsenal and Tottenham. You have to make it by the time you're 21. You have to show something.
Yeah.
Makes us believe that if you're going into the under 23s at any of these clubs, you're finished. You're never going to play for the first team.
It's easy to get carried away, isn't it, Joe? When you see a player who has a couple of good games, who has a couple of decent performances, and you give them a lot of slack, don't you? You go, especially if they've come through your youth system, you already want to nurture them, you want to hold on to them, you want to keep them. But as you say, I agree with you there. And there's no room for sentiment. It's a time to say, here you go. You've had we've given you this long. You've not quite met it. Move them along. And Manchester United had this difficulty for a long time in not moving players along when they should have already gone. They should have left. And
he has a good here with Rashford.
Yeah. Who's that? Sorry.
Yeah.
Anthony. Sorry. Who's got a good comment? Sorry, mate.
Annie. Annie with Rashford.
Yeah, Annie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's go on then, mate. What's the one?
Yeah, so Rashford, I would say he's just not going to go this season. I understand where Annie and I are pretty much always on the same page as far as these things go. Maguire's just not going to go. Martial obviously has to go, and Shaw's staying for one more season. I think they basically admitted that he has the opportunity to at least show what he's made of. So I think that as far as the ones that I'm looking at saying these are the ones we're going to shift, I don't think we have any star players to shift besides Tony. And I know you can argue whether or not he's a star, but
you see, for me, my comments. For anyone who's watching, I'm a great believer in Marcus Rashford. I think the guy is brilliant, but I also think that he's worn out, not physically but mentally. I think he's mentally worn out as a player, and I think you can see that. And I don't like to see that in a player because he's a good guy and he's also an incredible footballer. You know, you can tell that. I've been calling for a long time. I was hoping it actually happened in January. He needs a loan. He needs to leave the country, go to Italy, go to Spain, to Portugal, wherever it is, out of the limelight, and get back to enjoying his football again. Ten Hag has enough of a job as it stands without re-nurturing Marcus Rashford back into the club. They won't want to get rid of him. He's a Manchester lad. He's Manchester through and through. This should be an opportunity for the club to sit him down and say, we love you. You know, we care for you. We know how difficult things have been. We need you to, we've got this situation. There'll be a number of European clubs who'll be lining up for his signature on a loan, 12-month deal, and just go and just get back to enjoying football. Do your thing. Train on your own if it needs to be. I actually was saying, send him on a 6-week camp. Send him to Dubai with a couple of traders and stuff like that. And just, you know, away from social media, away from the news, away from what's going on at Manchester United, and just get your head straight. But Rashford won't be going, I'm afraid. Maguire, I just don't think you can sell him. As daft as that sounds, I don't think for any price you could sell him. Was too expensive in the first place. His wages are too high. And I don't think any club's really going to come in off the current form that he's in. I think next season, potentially, if you can rebuild and bring some new players in. Martial has to go. He's been, unfortunately, dreadful. He's been a dreadful player for a long, long time, hasn't he? But yeah, going on there, we've got a couple of other ones there. Are the reports that United and Barcelona agreed a fee for De Jong true? I saw the United plug tweet and was wondering what your thoughts on it were. What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, let me hop in here. So there was, you'd have to go real deep underground to actually kind of get this news early. Apparently, there was a meeting today with Barcelona's representatives and Frankie de Jong's representatives and United, obviously, in person. What's coming from that is essentially Barcelona ready to do a deal, United ready to do a deal. Frankie de Jong is still very skeptical. I went from 80% literally 3 hours ago to being 40%, 30%. They're going to need to do something special to convince Frankie, and I don't want that to be money. So
it's the last thing that you want it to be. I mean, we've spoken about this. It's not about bringing mercenaries to a club. You like Frankie de Jong. I think he's good. The jury's out for me still as to where he is. Whether or not Manchester United would be the right club for him right now, I'm not sure. Maybe in a year's time, maybe would be a better option. And I think you're correct. It's going to be really difficult to convince a player like Frankie de Jong to come to a rebuild project to play Europa League football next season when he's already at a club like Barcelona, as much as they're not doing great as it stands. He's going to have offers from other clubs who are potentially in a better position than Manchester United are. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands this season. Jesse, go on, mate.
Yeah, just the last thing. And this is it's an amazing change from United. If Frankie wants to go ahead and say, well, I just want to see if another club comes in, because Barcelona, they want to sell him. And the only other real team that's in that race is PSG. But he won't make up their mind till they know Tchouameni is officially off the table. Yada, all this. The biggest change that I'm seeing in United within this context is United are basically saying, okay, well, tell us by next week or we're walking away. So even if Frankie changes his mind after that, I'll be very happy to see that. That's a major structural change. To not panic and just be like, well, then we have to go find our next target. We're not going to just sit here and wait for you to make up your mind. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's good.
It just struck me as an interesting sort of signing that it was even being linked to the club, because it wasn't really a position that you needed any players in. It really, and I say that from a situation of looking at United and going, your problem is conceding goals. That's your issue, is conceding goals this season. There's only one game that you drew. You drew 0-0 against Watford at home. Otherwise, you didn't lack scoring goals. You just couldn't defend. players like Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who looks like he's leaving the club. He looks like he's, linked with Crystal Palace again, going back there. I think that will be good for his career. I think United was a bad move. I think that he suffered going to such a big club. I think the pressure was too much, and I think he would do better going to a club maybe further down the pyramid and kind of getting back on track. Defensively wise, Rafa Varane, I don't think you're going to be able to trust him next season, injury wise. He's proven that he has some injury woes, and you have to kind of take them on recent form and kind of say, is that someone that we can trust? Victor Lindelof has, he's not United quality, to be honest.
Varane, he's our best central defender, which says a lot.
Yeah, and he's not been there for that often this season, has he? Harry Maguire, I think he's done at the club, genuinely. I think what's been and done and what has happened, I don't see a way back, to be honest. But he will stay. He will stay because the club won't sell him. He's on too much wages, and I don't think you'll get a reasonable offer. I think he sits, as it stands, in the same boat as Lukaku at Chelsea. I don't think that they're going to be moving along just because of the current contracts that they're on.
Let me just go ahead because again, Andy's last comment there, if you want to put it up, is a really good point. He says, no, Dan, we need midfielders. McTominay and Fred isn't good enough. Even having Garner coming back isn't enough. And here's something that has only been caught on by a few people in the United community is we don't necessarily need a CDM to screen the back door. We need someone like Frankie de Jong, who first off understands the system because it's not a simple system that Ten Hag plays. I already have my doubts that he can play it the same way he did in Eredivisie. But we definitely need a player who's press resistant. Now, what we need is not a CDM. We need someone who can play in a 2, who has positional sense. Now, let's go through this. Donny van de Beek. He's a Frank Lampard. He's not positionally sound, but he arrives late in the box. He connects play from either a progressive 8 or a 10. Bruno, who is the last person you want to ask to stay in one position. You have Fred, who, if I were playing in midfield when I played in my younger years, he would be a nightmare to play with because he'd do some really good things. He'd press, work hard. But if I got the ball, off a center back, I don't know where he's going to be. I don't know if he's going to be to my left, my right. He's going to be in front of me, behind me. He could be playing at a 10 or on the right wing. You just don't know where he's going to be. McTominay just isn't good enough and isn't very good positionally as well. So you have no one in our entire midfield right now who has positional sense, who knows that, if I'm Frankie and I pick up the ball off the left winger, I need you to be either on my right or a little bit behind me on my right. Not 10 yards in front, not all the way out there. You know what I mean? So.
No, I absolutely do know what you mean. But, when we're talking about things have changed when it comes to transfers at United, that Frankie de Jong almost felt like it was just dragging his back a little bit. It felt like it was a big name signing when there's players out there who can go and do a job at United and improve your midfield without going for players who are going to be more difficult to get hold of, shall we say. Frankie de Jong is going to be a difficult signing, one that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort to try and get the job done. Would it not make more sense to have looked at some players who are a little bit more achievable or attainable? Because if this deal doesn't come off, this is time wasted.
No. I think that's the point. We've only really been pursuing this for 7 days, 9 days. I think that's the point, is that by next week, if it's a resounding no or a maybe in late June from Frankie, we're just walking away then. And that's why I'm saying major change. We would have chased him all summer. If this were Ed Woodward and Matt Judge, we would have chased him all summer.
Right, I see.
Did all of our time. I think that this is definitely a big change. Anthony asking, would Ten Hag play the same system as he played it in Ajax? I think he'll try and then realize really early on that he can't play that yet. Because
he was asked this as part of his initial press interview when he was unveiled as the manager. One of the interviews, reporters asked him, would he be looking to try and play the same style of football he played at Ajax here at Manchester United, which sounds like a daft question, but genuinely it's not, because as you just mentioned, it's a system which is complex. It's not as easy to just slot players in. You have to have the right personnel. I think he said that he will try, is from his words, he'll try to bring that style of play in. However, it will be based on what the players can do in training and on match day, I imagine. So I think there's a little bit of I think he's optimistic. He sounded like he was optimistic that was what he wanted to do, but I think he was also being realistic in saying he's not had a chance to analyse the players, he's not had a chance to see them and say, once I've had time to work with them, that's when I'll know what style that we can play football with.
He also is wise enough to take a look at the tapes, watch how each team plays, and realize that in Divisie he can play the way he wants against every team except for PSV and maybe Feyenoord and AZ Alkmaar. But in the Premier League, Zaha will kill his system, especially with the wrong players, because all you really need is one press-resistant player to beat the press. And if you can do that, let's just say you can't do it against his team 20 times a game, but the other 5 times you can, then you have someone like Zaha, which every team has one version of that except for the bottom 3-4 teams, and they can roast any defender on their day 1v1. And if you give them 5 chances a game, their chances are they're going to score 1, if not 3. It just, I don't know. I watched a lot of Ajax once we knew Ten Hag was coming in, and it's a really beautiful system, and it's really cool to see how like technically sound Ten Hag is. I just don't think it will work, especially with the wrong players. I just don't.
Well, we discussed this, didn't we, at the time when I was playing a little bit of devil's advocate with you when we looked at Ajax towards the end of the season struggled to keep clean sheets. We know at the start of the season they did very well. They were quite defensively sound, a lot of clean sheets, done quite well. But towards that business end of the season, it looked as if though either the system wasn't working quite as well, or opposition teams had worked out a way of getting at it. And as we've discussed, the quality of teams that Ajax have to play week in, week out in the Dutch league is, with the greatest respect to the Eredivisie, is not at the same standards as the Premier League. It's going to be a much harder situation week in, week out, as there's no mugs in the Premier League. We laugh and joke about teams like Norwich, who kind of come up one and then go down one, and come up one and go down one. They can still hurt you. They can still find a way of beating you. And those mid-table clubs, there's no easy games, especially away from home. So it'll be very interesting to see if it's a hybrid style, if it is the Ajax style that he's played, or whether or not it's actually a more traditional style, just to try and bed himself into the league and then bring players in who can play his style of football.
Yeah, just to kind of finish up on the point, I think that what you'll see is playing a similar style, but I think you'll see him play just a little bit, not even a little bit deeper. I don't know if it works a little bit deeper, actually. Playing kind of more like a mid to high block, because what they do is they play a possession based, like a direct but possession based system to get you pinned back.
Yeah,
and then they just push everyone forward. You have one sweeper, and then the other center back pushes forward. Then the right back or left back on the opposite side tucks into midfield. So you have like a center back and a one of your wing backs playing in the midfield, and that allows everything to be more structured. So then you can just press at infinitum, and it works really well. But we don't have the players to do that. We just don't have the players to do it. And I don't think that you can play that system by protecting yourself by pulling back 10, 15 yards, because then you can't box them in.
Yeah.
It's just a different version of, it's a weird Dutch version of the Gegenpress with a lot more like being inverted and people tucking into midfield and creating like a reverse triangle sort of thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you have all the forwards up, all the forwards up here, and then you have like a center back and a right back, and then you have a sweeper down here, and it's just
So it sounds like a system that, as you say, a lot of people are kind of. It's going to be something we've not seen if he does bring it into Manchester United. The first opportunity that we're going to get to see this, Ten Hag team. Funnily enough, I think it comes up against Liverpool. Is that your first friendly in June or July?
I think so. I think you guys are first.
Yeah, I think we, and then Then Liverpool, I think you play Crystal Palace as well, don't you? Down in Australia as well. So it'd be interesting to see if we see that kind of team. I think transfer wise, it will be interesting. Yeah, cheers, Harley. I think it's going to be interesting to see who you're able to bring in. It looks like Julian Timber is done. We think it's still not completely signed off and agreed, but it looks like it's there.
Yeah, sorry, Dan. I don't want to interrupt you, but I can run through these. So Timber, I'm 99.9% sure Timber is done. If United pull the trigger, Ajax won't fight us. They don't want to lose him, but they're not going to fight us over him. He wants to come, but it's not contingent on selling defenders. But I do think that United is doing this where basically notice how the deal was like really hot for a few days and was basically just finalized almost. It was so clear that everything's kind of all the ducks are in a row, but then it went quiet. I think United want to get rid of. They want Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Either it's 25 million to either Roma or Crystal Palace. Bailly 15 million to Roma. Phil Jones, Tuanzebe. Don't think we're getting any substantial fee for either of those two. So it's kind of just like get out of here. We'll pay your salary if we have to, but just get out because we need the spots. And that's for Timber. So that's looking like once those happen, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Wan-Bissaka goes to Crystal Palace and 2 days later or 24 hours later, Timber's signed. We get to hear we go from Fabrizio. The other one I want to put out there, because we were talking about defenders earlier, is we're still going in for Torres. We are still going in for Torres, and I think that there's a recognition that we need two defenders.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? So Timber can play right back and center back, and Torres is obviously a left-sided center back. I think there's an admission there. I think that there's a lot of competition for Torres this summer.
That's circa £80 million, isn't it? That's going to be 50 odd million for Pau Torres and 30.
40 is the rumor. I think his release clause is 55, and I think Villarreal recognizes that since they didn't sign him up to a contract and he was 55 on his release clause last summer, that it's 40 is what's being reported. And generally, when everyone says 40, it's 40. But then
that's the interesting thing, because I think we've had a bit of discussion with Anthony on some of our other shows that there's a lot of clubs out there who are desperate for centre backs, desperate for defenders in general. And you kind of, Jules Koundé looks like he's going to, it looks like he's off to Chelsea. There's no reason to kind of suggest that's not happening. Timber 25. I thought he was more. I thought he was closer to 30 odd.
30 euros. 30 million.
If you're going for 25, I think that's the right kind of price he should be paying for a player of his age and what he's achieved so far. So that'd be a good deal. But you'll just need players anyway. I mean, Pau Torres is probably one of the few names centre-backs in European football who's currently available. I can't think of anybody else who is sort of kind of available. Diego Carlos has already gone to Aston Villa, which was a great bit of business for them. That's meant to be getting signed just coming up to the next couple of days, and then that'll be done. He's done the medical, he's done everything like that. So for me, Pau Torres is 40-odd million. There's £65 million of your deal. Of that budget that we just discussed, 120 million, so on and so forth. It's half the budget just in two players. It shows how much money really needs to be spent, because you're still not even buying a midfielder as it stands with nearly with that much money spent.
I think if we don't get Frankie de Jong, and I do think that the actual, I don't like the term war chest. It's annoying. It's kind of it's such a media pejorative. What you call it though, the actual budget we have, I think Frankie de Jong, I think we could do with sales, including Anthony Martial for another 30. I think that
you get 30 million.
I actually think you can. I'm not even capping. Like I honestly, but let's just forget that. I think that for the right price, Nunes for 70 million euros. I think I don't even want to say this because I'm not trying to say like these, because we'll get into all that as well. Frankie de Jong for 60 million pounds up to 65 is what I think United are willing to spend. I think Timber for 25, and I think Torres for around 40 with outgoings. I wouldn't be surprised if United did that, but I think there's a lot of ifs. I think Nunes, lots of competition, mainly from actually. Let's get into that. So I don't want to go into that yet. Can we just push on to this real quick
Yeah, sure.
with Nunes? So he's coming to the Premier League. It's clear as day now. His agent isn't Jorge Mendes, but he brought in Jorge Mendes because he has amazing links to the Premier League. Obviously, is one of our most beloved agents. We love Jorge Mendes, but the only thing that scares me, and I don't even know if I want Nunes. I don't know if that's true twisted. They all are pretty commercial, but they're also valid signings. The only thing that really scares me is the fact that with Liverpool, who are kind of indirectly showing interest, but they're not going to show interest until first the Champions League final is over.
Yeah.
And second, once they offload Mane, Firmino, and Origu's already gone, right?
Well,
if you guys want to get Nunes, we can't compete for him. I don't know.
Yeah, you see, that's interesting actually, because I mean, I'm in the belief that Mane stays. Some of his comments are a little bit sort of clickbaity, sort of, people can clip them and take what they want from those situations. But he's mentioned and says that we still need to win more Premier Leagues. He sounds like he's not finished. With comments like that, he sounds like a player who's not finished playing where he is. He's mentioned, he says, once the Champions League final, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. It will be special. These little kind of comments just to me indicate he's staying, but you are correct. Origi is going. Firmino is going to see his contract out. He'll stay one more year. Nunes makes sense. I've been saying to Anthony earlier on into the Earlier Today show that I still think people need to he's had a very big season. And my concern is his players can then have a big downturn. They go from 30 or 40 goals and assists in a season, and then they drop down to 15, 16, and you think, well, hang on, where's that player gone? Sometimes you just get a bit of a correction. And I made Anthony laugh, and I sat there and said, well, we all remember Michu. And I'm not calling him Michu, but it happens. It does happen in football that a player can have a brilliant season and then they can drop. But Nunes does make sense. Klopp made some comments, so it's possible. But he also looks very much like a Manchester United style player.
Yeah, and I think that's the main point there. If Liverpool don't come in for him, they're talking about Real Madrid. Real Madrid is not going for him. I don't think. I think there's absolutely no chance of that. PSG is not. No. Obviously, they just signed up Mbappe. Bayern's looking at Mane. Is he really that sort? And he's already said he wants to come to the Premier League. So it's between Newcastle, Tottenham, Arsenal, and Manchester United. And I think within that, the best relationship and the best option is Manchester United. Tottenham would be something I would kind of consider as an offside shout, but the fact is they're going to keep Kane. I'm sure of it. They confirmed today that
comes to Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe
I'm buying into it. I don't care. I'm just going to buy into it for a bit. I'm just going to buy into it until it doesn't happen. I'm just going to bask in the idea that Harry Kane, Mr. England captain, could end up in a Liverpool shirt.
To be fair, the journalist who said it, the journal is a credible one that said, "Hey, there's talks." Like that doesn't mean something's happening, something's progressing. No. It means, when Liverpool say, just put in like a cheeky little, "Hey, Kane,
what do you think?"
Then it's like,
I mean, he's sort of, in a weird way. Just we'll digress just slightly, just because he's it's one of those things. But he's 28, and you think, is staying at Tottenham the right thing to do for another 12 months? He was he wanted to go last season. He was more than happy to leave and he was pushing a move. He wanted to leave. He wanted to go to City to win trophies. He's got no allegiance to Tottenham, really. We proved that last season.
I think he is on him. I think Conte would have to have some real nice red wine, be really good in bed to keep Kane from at least.
I think if he loses Kane, I think he's cartwheeling out the club. I think he's gone. I think he'll say, "See ya, bye-bye, I'm out of here. I'm not sticking around with you guys," because he needs someone like Kane for it to work. He does need him. I'd love to see it happen, but I don't think it does. So yeah, I think Nunes, Tottenham, don't see it happening. I don't think there's any space. Newcastle, I think, as much as they've got a lot of cash, I think it's too early. I think it's too soon to be looking at players like that. They've got to climb that pyramid a little bit before they start trying to shop in the biggest markets. And who was that last club that you mentioned?
Arsenal, but they're not going to beat us to Nunes's signature.
No, that sounds like Flapovic's deal all over again. I think they're going for Jesus, to be honest with you. But yeah, so strikers wise, Nunes makes sense. Frankie De Jong makes sense. Oh, sorry, just putting here Annie's message there. No, Dan, relax. I'm not allowed to dream, and neither are you.
That's what.
But listen, your dream is a dream. It lives in here. Mine could be a reality. We could see Mr. Harry Kane at number 9 at Liverpool taking Bobby Firmino's shirt. Come on, you know you'd love to see it. You know you'd love to see it.
We're not taking any of that, Annie. Fight back. load up the clips. Get the artillery ready. We're not letting this happen.
This is it. But just going back to United, what's your expectations sort of going into the first sign of, first 2-3 months of the season? What's kind of your expectations from the club? Where do you expect it to kind of be?
If we get in, so let's just say Frankie doesn't join, because like I said, it just pivoted so quick. It would take a lot to convince him. If we get like a Neves, Nunes, Timber, and then one other player, whether that's Torres or someone else, I'm looking at not like a quick start to preseason, but I'm looking at that being a fruitful time where we can kind of get things dialed in. I know Ten Hag is going to come back and want all of his players there, whether or not he has that or not. He's going to want at least 3 out of 4, and I think we're going to sign 4 or 5. So if we can get that, I'm fairly optimistic to see steady signs of progression, but I also wouldn't be surprised, depending on how the fixtures lay out, if we take a few L's in the first few games, but I think it will quickly pick up. I do think Ten Hag has an idea, but I'm gonna, keep my mouth shut for the most part until we actually see what's happening.
Yeah, and that's all you can do. I think the best way to kind of approach it. I mean, I was joking and laughing with you guys, reading some of the big accounts on Twitter, looking at how Manchester United will line up next season under Ten Hag. And it was kind of think that these people were still not taking the blue pill. They were still in the matrix, because they genuinely were still believing that United were going to be bringing Tchouaméni in. I said to you guys, Tchouaméni is going to someone who's winning trophies. He will not, and it looks like he is. He looks like he's going straight to Real Madrid, 80 million euros. I'm a Liverpool fan. I'd love to have had him. But if that's the case, go. He's not worth 80 million euros. I'm sorry, he isn't. He's an incredible player, but at that price, go for it. You spend it. That's fine. We'll find somebody who will do his job very similarly for half the price. They're out there. That's what Liverpool does. But it's going to be interesting. When I was reading some of the players, it was like Pau Torres, this player, that player. You're going to be bringing Julian Timber in. I think Mazzori, I think I pronounced his name correctly, who's gone to Bayern Munich.
Sorry. Yeah, from Ajax to Bayern Munich. Yeah.
Yeah, his name was put out there as someone available. So I think there was a bit of a dial back on for some of the United fans who kind of realised that the club needs to be looking at smart buys, not the buys that kind of come directly from FIFA. It's going out there and looking at players and going, who's going to improve our team bit by bit by bit? Because if it takes 2 or 3 years to get yourself back there, then so be it, because that's how sometimes it just has to be.
So there's, and just to tack onto that, because there's a couple that I haven't mentioned, and the reason why I don't mention them is because they're loose links. It's from like L'Equipe and other German outlets out there, where you've got the right back from Leipzig, who would cost us 15 million euros. Rone from Gladbach, There's a lot of players out there that we're being linked with tentatively. I just don't buy it. I know how my club operates, and I would love for that to happen. And if we started kind of pulling off those transfers, then I'd be a little bit more optimistic. I'd be able to at least look at those reports and with a little bit more. I'd actually do my research, but I just don't buy them. You know what I mean? So, and Gravenberch's gone as well. Yeah, Ajax has been absolutely scalped, especially if we get.
But they're well known for this, though, aren't they? This is something that Ajax do. They've done the RB model before RB did the RB model. In fairness, they've been a team who has grown players. They have an incredible, youth system. They can bring players through, teach them to play the Ajax way, play total football. They're a ready-made player, and they seem to create new players. And this is how they fund themselves. They have to sell their players because they know that they're not going to be able to keep hold of them. It's a shame that they're going for some of the prices that they're going for, though. They're going for a very cheap price. I think Gravenberch has gone for not an incredibly large fee. I don't think it was a lot of money at all.
It was like,
and he looks like a great prospect.
Yeah, it was like 20 million years or something. I just want to touch on this, Twisted, because I've seen your comments here.
Yeah.
Strengthen their spine and buy a new captain. 100%, we need to strengthen our spine. I think we have a couple captains in the squad already. Not Bruno, but I think David De Gea is the one I would appoint if Maguire was to be dropped. And obviously Cristiano is a shot for that too. I think
you don't want to give it to someone who's only got one season left on the contract. It doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't at all. So no,
he would be the logical choice, but when he's only got 1 year left, it's going to be to give him the band, and then somebody else has got to get it next season. It brings the story back round again. It's about kind of a long-term future of it. De Gea has been a long-term fixture of Manchester United. And I think on that captain's armband, I know that's been brought up a number of times for Ten Hag. He's been met with that question, who's going to be the captain next season? For me, the best way is the Liverpool way, again, is that they just do a vote. The players vote. Simple as that. He just leaves them to it and says, okay, every season, vote for the captain. And it just means that whoever gets the most vote is clearly the person who has the most sway within that dressing room as it stands. So I think that will be an important way of doing it. But who knows? It's another little background story at United, which just doesn't really need to be done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think my only concern with that is just the first thing, and this is something people haven't talked about enough because we're all talking about transfers and style of play and how we progress the team. The first thing he needs to do is change the culture. Again, I don't like that term either, culture, just because it's so overplayed. But the fact is, we have a bunch of overpaid millionaire babies, a lot of which we are getting rid of through just circumstance, which is amazing. But that's the first thing that Ten Hag needs to come in and do, is lay down the law and say, look, Harry, thank you for your service. You're still part of my plans, but strip him of that armband, hand it to David De Gea. Cristiano, you're obviously one of the captains already in the dressing room. Bruno, quit your bitching and whining. No one likes it. It makes you look an ass. Excuse my language. But it's those little things, and it's just, those are the first things that are so important to turn over and stop, because right now player power is rampant. And I think there are reasons that is the case. I think that it's been building up for a long time, but I think having a coach, a manager, whatever you want to call him, because Ollie was not a coach, who has no self-respect either. He doesn't command respect, nor does he have respect for himself. I don't believe it, because I've never seen a human being like that in my life who's interacted with the world in that way. But then also going from that, where everything's breaking down in the dressing room, to then promoting an interim manager who's just going to be gone in 6 months anyway. It was a recipe for disaster. And
it has been a disaster. It has, and it's interesting you say that and you bring up Ollie. I'll just give you the way that I viewed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as a Liverpool fan. He was an interim manager. He was brought in after Mourinho. He wasn't meant to be a full-time appointment. And I say that because he never made sense to be a full-time appointment. He had managed Molde and won the Norwegian League. Wonderful. Okay? Fantastic. When he came to the Premier League for the first time at Cardiff, he was horrendous. He did a very, very poor job with Cardiff. He didn't do well at all. It made no sense that a manager with his CV was able to come into Manchester United to take their job on a full-time basis. So he was an interim. But that got forgotten about. I think it got forgotten about because people got caught up with what happened at PSG and in Paris. You went on this amazing run of form where you were somehow riding this crest of a wave and being incredible. And I was just thinking, how is this happening? How on earth are they doing these things? And I realised it. You were like Moments FC. You were relying on players who could do things all the time. Exactly, Annie. That's my point. I didn't want to say him was the worst one because it was a vote. But yeah, the opinion of the fans was he was their worst manager at Cardiff. That's the opinion of the fan base of where he was before. So what happens in PSG happens. The top Reds, your ex-Manchester United players, were coming in there and were backing their mate. Because that's what he is, their friend, and applying a lot of pressure from the outside inwards. You know, we all know the quote, put the contract down, give him the numbers and sign it. Why? That was my first question was at the time is why? Why do you need to give him a contract? Who's going to take him? Is Barcelona going to take him? Is Real Madrid going to take him? No, they're not. You're Manchester United. Wait until the season's ended and then look at giving contracts. Don't be giving contracts in middle of seasons and give him this 5-year deal, I believe it was at the time, and sign him up for all this time and sit there and go, it's a recipe for disaster. And it was. He was meant to be an interim manager who stuck around for over 2 years, and it made absolutely no sense to me as a Liverpool fan. I was happy he stayed because I could tell he didn't know what he was doing. He had no idea what he was doing when it came to playing in the Premier League. And because of that sort of, he's an ex-player, you never want to admit it. You don't want to admit that it's not working. You know, fans didn't want to admit that it wasn't working. He's not the right man. Because remember what he did for us. Remember what he did for us. And now's the time to take away from that situation, remove anyone from the club who's got some form of history, and just get people in to do their job. That's all that needs to happen.
110%. We also didn't do anyone else a favor by doing that. I know Chelsea had a transfer ban, so they just kind of followed the fold because they were already in a very difficult position that year. But Lampard comes in, then you see Arteta come in, and yeah. I think Roman isn't so concerned about being protected because he knew the way he wanted to operate things. Whether they messed up on transfers or whatnot, they were still winning trophies. They were doing things in a way that at least brought success, which is the ultimate goal. United showed all the big clubs a blueprint of bringing someone who can be token legend and protect the owners, which is why we were vicious towards Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the end because we had seen how he was protecting them. There were 5 or 6 periods in time where he should have been sacked before that. And it got to the point where we had no choice but to turn on Ollie and say, essentially, we want you to fail. We want you to fail so badly so we can get you out of our club, because not only are rivals just laughing at us, we can't watch post-match interviews because we don't respect you. You're not qualified for the job. You're completely failing the club. And if you have anything about you, you would resign. And it took so long for the club to finally go, because Ollie was never going to resign. It's his dream job, for the club finally to go, okay, enough is enough. And even then, you know, they didn't want to do it. It was so bad.
It was funny as, like, it actually got to a point where I think throughout last season, it started well. And I said to a good friend of mine, he's a Manchester United fan, I said, after you beat Leeds 5-1, I went, do you know what? I don't think that was a great result. And he said, what do you mean that's not a great result? And I just said, you won 5-1. But I said, Leeds was suicidal. Leeds were suicidal in that game. Like they were literally, and they went on to be suicidal all season until they got Jesse Marsch in. So I was right in saying that at the time, and that's how they went on. And then you got like the result that you wanted against Newcastle, and Ronaldo scored, and everything was great. But the first inkling I got was when you got that last minute winner against West Ham, and I thought, this isn't sustainable. Like it was always like a moment had to come up. Something spectacular had to happen for you to get the result. And then it carried on to a point where you then started to lose games, you started not winning matches. And it went from being funny to thinking, wow, this is brilliant, to actually at one point, I started to feel quite sorry, because you were sitting there listening to his interviews, listening to what he was saying, and it was almost uncomfortable to watch. You know somebody's not in the right job. You go, why are you still here? Having to deal with these things. Just do the right thing and go. Do you know what I mean? Just go, this isn't me.
Yeah, he was coming into press conferences after games with puffy red eyes and puffy cheeks and black rings around his eyes. Go look at a picture of him. There's one of him walking across the street in Norway or something, from a supermarket.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah,
he looks healthy. He didn't look healthy
again
here, man. He looked like he was about to commit suicide, but he wasn't willing to admit to himself that it's not it, and it wasn't healthy for anyone in the relationship. And yeah,
he looked like a boxer who was out on his feet for a long time. Like someone needed to throw the towel in, and eventually they did the right thing and sacked him. I mean, they should have done it after the United game, after Liverpool beat them 5-0. That should have been it there and then, but they didn't. They prolonged it.
We called it. I think a couple of us called it. Andy might have my back on this. I don't know if he called it then. It was myself, KJ, and probably Annie and a couple others in various chats. And it was like, after that, during that first international break, because I think we made it to the third one, and he made it through the third international break at the beginning of the season. At the moment we lost that game or whatever, Europa League final, there you go. But it was the real point of like absolute breakage, where everyone knew like there was no chance of anything, of any comeback, of anything happening at all, was that first international break this year. The Europa League was the fifth or fourth sackable offense. There was the going out of Champions League the year earlier. There were stints of losing 4 or 5 games on the trot. There were so many instances where we knew he wasn't going to be able to do it, because he'd get us here and then he'd pull us down to here, then get us here, then pull us down to here, then get it. It was just a carousel.
Well, it was the Watford one there, Andy. You're right, mate. But for me, it was 5-0 Liverpool at Old Trafford. Salah scores a hat-trick. Like, that was it. Like, for me, you can't stay in this job. It's not possible. Like, it's the most embarrassing thing that could have happened. I know you guys all believe that the City game was a worse one, but no one will remember that 2-0 loss. No one. But 5-0 is a T-shirt and it's a mug in the Liverpool fan base, by the way. It's memorabilia. It could be a DVD if it wasn't for the fact that we're actually winning trophies this season as well, to be honest. The 4-0 actually at Anfield this season actually felt like it was a foregone conclusion, that it was going to happen. The way that you were there for the taking. But that 5-0, that should have been it. But then to carry it on, City, 2-0 loss, Watford, 4-1, just 2 games that were unnecessary, should have just gone. There you go. Yeah, Jose got sacked for losing 3-1. Exactly. It wasn't. I don't know what they were holding on for. That's what didn't make sense. I don't know why they were just, why were they trying to recruit somebody? Were they worried that there was nobody there to bring in, or what was it? It was. I don't understand it, Jesse. I don't understand it.
There's 2 points. They wanted the the man to take the bullet for him, and Ollie was doing it exceptionally well. Tons of top Reds were still in Ollie's side, even when he got sacked, which boggles the mind. But the other one was they didn't want to have to do the whole interim thing. They were hoping that Ollie could somehow make it to the end of the season so that they could sack him and bring in Pochettino. That's exactly what they hoped for.
Really?
We wouldn't be here with Ten Hag right now if Ralph hadn't gotten that job. They wouldn't even be looking at him. They knew what they wanted, and it was an Ed Woodward plan, despite the fact that Woodward was leaving. The club would be in such a worse place if it weren't for, unfortunately, the misfortune of poor old Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Someone had to take the hit, and it couldn't have happened to a worse person because he is a nice guy. I'm sure of it. I'm sure he's a great human being. I'm sure he never meant to hurt anyone, but someone had to take the fall. And just going to Twisted's point here, is appointing Ten Hag a big risk? At United, appointing any manager is a big risk.
Yeah.
So,
well, it has been since Fergie. At the end of the day, every one of them, none of them have worked.
Well, Twisted brought this up the other day in Discord, and he said, "Well, don't you think that Sir Alex Ferguson is bigger than the club?" The fact is, and this is what I said, and I think you agreed with me, Dan, Sir Alex Ferguson was the club. So he is the proportionate size of Manchester United because he was the club. And this is why things go so sideways when you have a commercial being, which is the Glazers and Woodward and Manchester United, the brand. And then you have one of the most successful managers, the most on trophies alone at this point in time, successful manager of all time in all human history.
He'll never be matched.
But
Calm.
Well, I don't know. Like Pep might do it, but the point is,
not here in the Premier League. He won't.
Not in the Premier League, and that's fair. But that's kind of the point is they didn't have to run anything on the football side. So I think they got carried away a little bit, thinking that they didn't need to be a football club because they were so used to never having to worry about anything. Because Sir Alex, his son, his assistant coaches were doing all the scouting. They were flying across the continent to scout players. So I think that they got a little jaded, and then Ed Woodward figured he'd just play Football Manager in real life for a decade. And now I don't know what Richard Arnold is thinking. I have no conclusive proof. What he said is reassuring. The restructuring is reassuring. Ten Hag is reassuring. Murtough is reassuring. Firing the head scouts and Matt Judge is reassuring. But at the end of the day, we don't know what Richard Arnold is going to do. But if he knows what's good for him, he'll see what Woodward did and just recognize you can't do that because United fans, English fans in general are crazy, and it's not going to be good for your health. Just the right way. Don't do it the wrong way. So
I think it's funny talking about saying is Ten Hag a risk? I mean, I did bring this up again, playing a little bit of devil's advocate as to whether or not he was actually qualified to take the job. And I'd say that with the greatest of respect. He's won 3 Eredivisie. And he's also won the was it the Bundesliga 2?
Yeah, he would have done.
He would have won that with Bundesliga. I know that Bayern Munich 2 can't actually go up because of the way their system is, but he still won that cup there. But for me, it's like you're almost paying for the fact is you have the greatest manager in English football. In terms of time spent at a club, no one's ever spent that amount of time as a manager at any club ever, has ever been so successful, has ever won so many trophies, and has also commanded such complete respect. At no point other than those early days at United was it ever questioned that Fergie would ever be anywhere but not at the club. Do you understand what I mean? Like even every manager that we can think of, barring as it stands Jurgen Klopp, who is currently the longest running manager who hasn't been questioned, is like, is he the right man for the job? Pep Guardiola's questions are already coming a little bit now. People are going, is he going to bring the Champions League? I think if he doesn't bring it this season, those voices will get louder. But now I always think that it's trying to move away from that kind of belief that those days that Fergie brought can be replicated, because I don't think you can. And I don't think at United, I don't think you can replicate it anywhere in the Premier League. I don't think it can happen.
I think what you can do, you can run a club, a one-man club. Twisted kind of says it here. There's still room in football for a one-voice club. United success was built on it. I think you can run a one-man club or a one-voice club or a one-man's voice club, but I don't think they can be successful because City and Liverpool and Chelsea and all the top clubs are delegating in such an efficient manner that it's almost like if you had Sir Alex Ferguson, it's almost like that you have Jurgen Klopp and FSG, and just their brain is connected to every facet of the organization. And you need manpower, you need brain power. You can't. You could probably run a club that way, but you wouldn't be successful because there are other people doing it more efficiently. So
I think the modern game is, for me, my opinion on that is, I think the modern game has moved from that. I think you can have a voice piece. I think Jurgen Klopp actually does this very well, like Ferguson does. He is the face. He is the brand of Liverpool as it stands. You know, it's Jurgen Klopp. Fergie did this very well. He was the person who, that people listened to, people who saw. He was the voice. He was the club in a person at the end of the day. But now, with the way that football's moved on, with sports science, with data analysis, with the everything has become so much more scientific in a way that I don't think one person is able to do all these jobs anymore. I think that it takes a whole team of 30, 40, 50 people to successfully run these clubs. You need the right sporting directors, head of physiotherapy, head of medical science, head of neuroscience that Liverpool have got at the moment, using people who are going at data analysis, that all those people putting that information in so that Jurgen Klopp now is able to do his job, which is speak for the club and to coach his players. Yeah, I trust everyone else to do all of those jobs on his behalf.
It would take 50 hours in a day to maximize all the skill sets, and you'd have to be 300 years old and never wasted a second since you were born to be able to do all the things. And like I said, have 50 hours in a day on top of that in order to do, like, you just can't really do it anymore. And keep in mind that, Wenger, Sir Alex, they came in with very, very new ideas.
Yes.
Sir Alex kind of came in with a way of living, of raising young men and having them reach their full potential in that day and age. Stop the drinking culture, no more smoking if you're going to be playing for this club. Wenger came in with a lot of sports science sort of things. Then you have
the creatine, diet changes, all those, no salt in the diet, no sugar in your tea. These were all, like, to us now, they're common practice, that if you wanted to be, better and stronger, that you would do those things. But then it was groundbreaking. Back in the 90s, it was groundbreaking.
Yeah, there were novel ideas that one had really focused on. People didn't really respect, the human body and physicality in that way. And tactics come in later. Sports data. I mean, like, I would say Pep is probably Chelsea's kind of like new money being the advantage. And you have City come in a few years later, 5 years later, and it's tactics and it's money, but it's tactics. And then Pep comes, or Klopp comes in, and it's sports data with FSG or FSG, who had already proved its track record for years in Major League Baseball and across American sports.
Yeah,
it's a constant evolution, and the next team to be on top will be one of the powerhouses who has the financial clout, or financial power, and the clout, the prestige, who can also implement all of these things into one. So,
and that's how football is as it's to try to explain is now the way that the game is played. It's almost one off the pitch, if that makes sense. Every club is rich now. Every club is rich. I'm as going to say that to say, Anthony, talking of clubs that are rich. I'll just move on to that for a second. But every club's rich now. Every club's able to make money. Every club's able to offer big pay packages. I mean, Aston Villa's just paying Bouba Kamara 175 grand a week, and Diego Carlos 200 grand a week. They have money to pay for these players. It's no one's skint, really. within the Premier League. We'll carry on, mate. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I need to run to the bathroom. Can you just interact with the comments?
Yeah, I'll carry on. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so this is how I see it now, is that when you're bringing in these situations, it's no longer just money. FFP rulings, the way that situation is becoming more and more stringent. We've got Manchester City's investigation is coming to a close, a 3-year, very secretive financial fair play investigations coming to a close. I think that the way that the money can be spent is a lot more difficult now. So looking at Newcastle, what's it? I'll have a look at that in a second. I like that. Yeah, Newcastle. Yeah, Anthony. I mean, it's a big possibility, and I think Newcastle are going to be a strong player in this. But the one question I've got to kind of like put out to you guys is that we kind of mentioned on the fact is that there's not a large number of available centre backs of the highest level of quality. And I think it would probably go to say for goalkeepers as well. Is this something that's actually causing an issue because there's too many big players? There's too many clubs and not enough big players available to go around. I'd like to hear your opinions on that as to whether or not we could end up seeing almost a saturation point where there's too many big clubs all vying for a smaller pool of players who are able to achieve the greatest of successes. So I'd be interested to see how that moves along with going from there. But Newcastle have got a very good chance. They've got all the money. I think they're going to have to go through a few iterations. I don't think they'll be able to attain greatness the same way that City did. I don't think they'll be able to do it as quickly. I think it may take a decade. But if they spend wisely, buy the right players, get the right managers, then success is inevitable. If you do all the right things, the question will be is if they can do all the right things time and time again, won't it? Everyone has money. That's true, Annie. Every club does have money now. Just looking at Annie, unpopular opinion, Jamie Carragher is a bigger Manchester United legend than Gary Neville. Do you say that because of his honest comments towards what was going on with Ollie? Because the one thing I will say about Jamie Carragher is that I love him obviously as a Liverpool fan, but he does know football. He knows football more than people give him credit. He will know what's going on. He will say it for what he sees. So it will be interesting to see, if that had an effect. I'm not sure if it did, but I think he was kind of just saying it how he saw it, to be totally honest with you. I agree on that, but I'd love to have a player like Tarkowski. Yeah, Tarkowski, he would be an interesting one at Chelsea. I think I'm actually surprised his name hasn't come up quicker, for a number of clubs. I thought that he would be a kind of a hot name almost straight out off the bat. Now that Burnley have gone, there's not many players to pick up the bones from that club, to be honest with you, that you would bring in. Nick Pope would be someone I'd be looking at if I was a mid-table club as a goalkeeper. I think he would improve a lot of clubs. I think he's a good keeper. James Tarkowski, he would be a good option. So it will be interesting to see. But the overlap show, no worries. Jesse, can you just take over 2 seconds? Just got to jump off a sec.
Yeah, no worries. What did you say there? I mean, the manager should underwrite every footballing decision. I would agree with that, but just going back to what I was saying about there not being enough time in a day, and when you have clubs like Liverpool and City who are operating at such a level where they have 4 or 5 executive personnel working on these projects and trying to integrate different players and go scouting and set up these data systems, it's just not possible for one person to make all of them. I can kind of get behind the idea that you can give the final say to one football person like Ten Hag, Klopp, Pep, Sir Alex, but I just don't think it works in practicum. I think ultimately you need more people working just because the competition is so tight. Did you see the overlap show, Andy? I actually haven't watched that yet, and yeah, Tarkowski, would be great for Arsenal, Leicester, and Newcastle. Another shout is Cornet for a team like Arsenal, a team that need a winger on the cheap. You know what I mean? Thanks, Anthony, man. I think we're about to wrap up here. I don't know what Dan's thinking, but it must be super late for him.
You're one back. Yeah, we were looking to kind of wrap up there. But so that's it, really. Yeah. I think we've covered a lot there. There's a lot of stuff that's going to go on at United. I think the next 2-3 weeks, the next month or two is going to be really telling as to what changes are going to be going on. I mean, do you have any concerns that you may not bring in the kind of targets that they will be looking at, just due to the current situation and what's been going on at United? Do you have any concerns that you'll miss out on players?
I have massive concerns with this. We have 4 teams in the Premier League need new strikers. Now, Chelsea need to get rid of Lukaku and a couple others. Arsenal are going to do something with Gabi Jesus. That's fine. None of us are going for him anyways. Liverpool are selling forwards, maybe. I know you disagree, but I'm just saying, what if? Then across...
Oh, no, it's a definite possibility. Definitely.
You have more teams. If Tottenham get themselves in a pickle, they only really have 3 offensive players that are worth anything. My biggest worry is that there's maybe 2 forwards on the market who are worth anything in Nkunku and Nunes. So it's going to be, early bird gets the worm, and it's going to be a lot of money, and it's going to be really competitive to get these players. For defenders, Chelsea already had Koundé wrapped up, but then, I mean, we kind of have a straight shot for Timber because of Erik Ten Hag and our relationship with Ajax. But even then, Pau Torres, if we want him, and that will probably be something for next year for us, if not this year, there are at least 4 clubs looking at him right now for £40 million. It's a steal, really. I'm more worried about that, about the market is not saturated. So
no, there's not a lot of options available. So yeah, I think it's going to be telling. I think it's going to be interesting to see. But with that, we're coming up to an hour and 20 odd minutes. I've really enjoyed the stream, Jesse. Really appreciate you coming on. I think we've had some great comments in the chat there. We've had some good points to bring up. Thanks for coming on for this late night show for our UK viewers, and the afternoon and morning show for those around the world. So we really appreciate you coming. If you can hit the like button, we'd really appreciate it. Any comments and what we've had to say. If you want to come on the show, let us know. Always free and available. We can find something to kind of talk about. Anything with your comments. Really, really enjoy it. If you can hit that like, hit the subscribe button, and we will catch you next time. Cheers, guys. See you all later. Thank you.
Later, fellas.